it's an interesting kind of, I guess, life lesson that I've taken to everything else. That if you realize immediately that no one has all the answers, there isn't really often a right or a wrong answer, but there's good people trying to do good things with best endeavors. Things will go wrong, and you just learn from those, as opposed to it being an exposure of a flawed personality that you don't, or knowledge that you don't know everything. You can move on much more effectively, having that confident vulnerability to say, well, no, I don't know all the answers. And so, Claire, what I now do is I just surround myself by significantly more talented and bright people, such as yourself, to compensate for all of my, you know, misgivings.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Exponential Potential. And this month we have been focusing in on uncertainty. It's That's probably my adjective for the month, is a nervous giggle, and see how we go. So today I'm just stoked to be joined today by Jake Niarchos, who is a wonderful guest for us to have. Jake has dealt with adversity, complexity, situations when you've got to think on the move, so much in the way of handling shit and moving on, getting on with it. And Jake, as you can probably see from his background, has got a history in rugby and in professional rugby as well. So performed at an elite level in terms of sport, and then recreated himself as a business leader, really enthusing and inspiring scaling companies to keep growing. Jake is very much focused on the human aspects and the human potential, and seeks to bring that out into the individuals and the organizations that he works with. And so we are in for a roller coaster of an interview. I have promised I'm going to squeeze him as much as I can to get his answers. But Jake, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm slightly uncertain, obviously, about how I'm going to fare in this because you've put me in such a positive frame that it can only be downhill from here. So let's deal with that. But no, thank you for having me, Claire. Great to be here.
Well, okay. So now we do have to explain the rugby shirt, because that needs to have a little bit of sense making. And perhaps I'm going to dive in, give you a chance to talk about that. You had, continue to have, but you previously had a very illustrious sports career, but needed to transition. So why don't you tell us what identities you've held over the years and why you've got a shirt behind you?
Yeah. So well, I've got a shirt, I guess, in the frame very unsubtly. The reason being for that is many years ago, I was at school and was playing rugby at a time when it turned professional. I think the rugby community didn't quite know how to handle the transition from amateur rugby to professional. I think I must have been, Claire, some kind of rounding error or administrative error because I got plucked from school and straight into the Saracens first team squad. And Saracens, for those that don't know much about rugby, are kind of now the most successful club in Europe. Um, so comically, I went from playing rugby with my school mates to suddenly being thrust into a pitch with some of the world's best rugby players. So it's kind of a spitting image version of it. Uh, and I thoroughly loved playing rugby for many years. Was not nearly as successful as many of my buddies who were kind of the top of their game. Um, but loved it. Some lifelong friendships, and I got to see what excellence kind of looked like. And actually, under the hood, you see these legends, but it's just down to knowing kind of what you're trying to achieve and just hard work every day. So that's a really good grounding that I've taken into everything else. And I think part of your sort of question there was the transition from sport to the world of work, and in a way that hasn't changed too much. I kind of think, well, if you have a good idea as to what you're trying to achieve, you have a good idea about how you're trying to achieve it, and you're putting in blood, sweat, and hopefully not that many tears, surrounded by good people. I've kind of tried to recreate that kind of wherever I am, really. And certainly to your point of uncertainty and resilience, being beaten up by people twice your size who are twice as fast as you has also helped. Let's call it, develop character over the years.
But also the description of being a schoolboy and then being thrust into the first team, where you have guys who are physically huge and kind of internationally renowned in their own rights as well. So kind of imagine the imposter side is just ping, 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 ping
Ah,
everywhere.
hugely, hugely. And yeah, so I mean, I can say it kind of joking about it now because it's 27 years later. But yeah, every day I was thinking, well, when will I get found out for, there's been some huge error? But fascinating enough, much like imposter syndrome, in that case, many people did have good answers. But even though they were representing their country or a group of countries or top international point scorer, most international caps, having spoken with them, we had a do last week, and 27 years on, it's amazing how you can become more honest because it's almost a lifetime ago. Many people felt the same. We were all in similar boats, feeling that we were part of this amazing thing, moment in time. All well, many of us thinking, well, we didn't quite deserve to be there. So it's an interesting kind of, I guess, life lesson that I've taken to everything else. That if you realize immediately that no one has all the answers, there isn't really often a right or a wrong answer, but there's good people trying to do good things with best endeavors. Things will go wrong, and you just learn from those, as opposed to it's as opposed to it being an exposure of a flawed personality that you don't, or knowledge that you don't know everything. You can move on much more effectively, having that confident vulnerability to say, well, no, I don't know all the answers. And so, Claire, what I now do is I just surround myself by significantly more talented and bright people, such as yourself, to compensate for all of my, you know, misgivings.
But that, oh, Jake, the essence of what you're describing there, by the way, thank you. And we all need to learn to take a compliment. So thank you. But the essence of what you're describing there, I can see how you've taken that from the sport environment and into business, particularly in scaling businesses. Corporates, I'd argue, equally need this humility of we're all kind of learning, we're fumbling, just we're working our way through. Do you find that it's that having learned all those lessons, they are easy to transfer in that way and inspire others that you work with?
Uh, yeah, I mean, if I if I think about the red thread of what I've done, um, I've stolen, sorry, not stolen, I have leveraged best practice um, from just about every interaction that I ever have. I think that's really good. I'm going to try and take that on. So the bit that's easy in terms of transferring is the knowledge of what good looks like. Uh, the bit that's less easy is obviously putting it into practice because that requires a whole bunch of change for many things and ultimately people. Um, so yeah, I mean, ultimately, high performance in my mind, and so I know this isn't necessarily what it's about, and the opposite, and some of that change creates uncertainty. But high performance is knowing roughly what you're all trying to do, having a good idea about how you're going to do it, surrounding yourself with a bunch of people that are all motivated, capable, supported to do that, and and it's very easy to say, but obviously putting that into practice, especially in the big corporates, because it's more trying to turn a tanker, not turn or adjust, whatever you want to say, but equally the people that have been there for a long amount of time who have reached the top change always comes with, with risk. Is that the time that
Mm.
they really want to risk things? Sometimes, they've got the personality to do that, but you've got to convince so many people to do that. So I think it's easier with smaller, scaling organizations. But then that end of the scale, sometimes they don't have the resources, whether that's money or, skills to get these things done. But so good, knowing what good looks like is one thing, getting it done is the fun bit.
Mm. I want to narrow. I want to kind of narrow the focus back down a little bit to you, because I'm when we're talking about uncertainty, very often it's easy to say the uncertainty of a negative life event going on or a negative world event that's going on, but actually, uncertainty is day one in a new job, really, isn't it? There are so many exciting moments in your life when your role shifts, and for you as a role as a sportsman, as a business leader, as a dad, that's shifted significantly over the decades. How have you adapted to these changes? You know, kind of what's been your way of staying grounded and thriving?
Uh, I probably got sort of two different answers to that. One is up until the age of 42, where I uh, just threw myself into whatever it was at 1,000 miles an hour. And where there were any kind of deficiencies or, kind of areas for improvement, those would be compensated just by pure gusto and energy and everything else. Uh, at the age of 42, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. Um, and by the way, that stood me in good stead. The successful sport, life and work was successful, but it's not sustainable because as you get older, it takes a lot of energy to do all of that. Just as a quick footnote, the reason I was like that was because my dad died when I was 5, and I learned at an early age that shit happens and you just get on with it, right? So that's kind of how we dealt with it. Life isn't always fair. Just just attack things. But at 42, I did this thing which I hadn't really done much of before, and it's a phenomenally revolutionary sort of approach to life, which is this thing called thinking. Now, you may have heard of this wonderful new strategy. Um, and I just thought, well, okay, I'm roughly halfway. I don't have any intentions of retiring. I'm not particularly into golf. Um, so how do I want to spend the second half of my life? Um, and I worked out what's important to me. I worked out what I needed to kind of get energy. So I kind of came up with a list of the things important to me from a work environment. By the way, that's good people doing something meaningful and purposeful and putting enough food on the table at home. Um, but also, people talk about work-life balance. It's funny because actually the life element of that equation should be 100% of it. Not, it's not work and life. Work is part of life. So all the things I'd previously sacrificed for work, um, uh, I, I listed all the things that gave me energy or give me energy, and I wouldn't then, deprioritize them. So this morning and 4 or 5 times a week, I'm like a dog. I need to be run. I need to, be told by a Marine how to exercise. And that makes me a better human being, more energy, better ability to focus, and things like that. So friendships, family, all the things that are often deprioritized. I said, no, no, no. I've got what I call my pillars, and I make sure that I have got enough of those things in my life to give me the energy I need to then be better in the world of work. And in work, it's the number one thing I look for is, in terms of the leadership team that I'm working with, um, are they good people? Do they all trust each other? What happens in that group of people when something goes wrong? And it's not often discussed at leadership because people pretend that things will never go wrong, and it's not real life. And if you know that they're going to work together, they learn from it and they work together as a team to get things better, then that's kind of I put myself in the environments where I know there's a good chance for growth um, and basically to have a bit more of an enjoyable human experience.
Well, and also what you're describing there and those values, those are key structures that anybody can implement at any level. So focusing on your physical body and what that means in terms of your health, focusing in on friends, choosing who you gravitate to in a work environment. You know, very often we surrender those controls out and say, well, I haven't got time, I haven't got the resource, I haven't got this. But if we got real, what you're describing, everybody has access to in one form or another.
Yeah, well, when I was going through this kind of epiphany of the things that would make my life kind of better ultimately, I was the Chief Revenue Officer for a listed healthcare company, so responsible for all the revenue, but it was applicable there, um, as it is to, the founder who's doing a 90-hour week because they're trying to do everything, and if they don't, the whole thing fails. And it's exactly the same. And I don't have time. I always mentally just scrub that out and say, well, you're choosing not to make the time. Also, another phrase that I kind of sort of puts my alarm bells up is when people say, I should do this, because that is some exterior force telling you that you need to be doing something. Whereas actually, is that the thing that you choose to do because you are taking control of your situation? So rather than I should do something, is that, work out, well, is it something you want to do and you can do? So yeah, the linguistical element and just catching some of these things are, I think is quite important too.
And would you say those have fed into your feeling of confidence and resilience throughout the years?
Absolutely. So obviously had quite a big life moment at 42 with cancer. Um, and whether it's, I feel more confident, I feel more comfortable with who I am because I essentially know more about what it is that I want. I know more about and comfortable about being able to understand and articulate the strengths, what I'm good at, which, also what I enjoy, and also what I'm not as good at. Right. So I'm some of the details and the organizational, the operational bits, kind of that's not my bag. The financial bits are not my bag. But before you try and climb the ladder and do everything and profess to be good at everything, um, but ultimately it's all of those things. And I went through a period. I did a bit of meditation, all the things that you can do, and it's very easy to roll them off. But actually, if you do these things, ultimately it leads to I'm just calmer internally. So yeah, it's in a good spot.
Mm, and and again, it keeps coming back to if you're more grounded and you're more calm, the world around you doesn't seem as chaotic and frenetic, or you don't have to react to that. That's possibly the better way to describe it.
Absolutely. I had a few months off with cancer, and I because I was a typical me at that time. Almost on day one, I wrote down a list of 20 things or initiatives that I needed to do in order to kind of improve and make the most of my time off, which was a bit comical looking back at it now. But one of them, yeah, I got all sorts of coaching and everything else, and there was one bit which linked to what you're saying is just imagine this visual sort of exercise of imagine yourself in the tornado. People talk about being in the eye of the storm, and often we are, but actually in the eye of the storm, it's immensely calm. So see all the chaos. Often the instinct is to reach out and control it. If you do, you'll get kind of caught up in it. Work out what you do need to kind of, to change and get involved in, and the rest of it just kind of let it go. And that was always a visual representation which kind of has stayed with me.
So, Jake, I know that we're pushed for time, so I'm going to ask you two more questions. The first question is in relation to the audience. What's the best way for people to tap into your work and understand what you're doing and kind of soak up some more of this philosophy that probably people don't get to see very much?
The best one, I mean, I am a big drinker of coffee, Claire. So anyone that wants to kind of reach out and and drink overly strong coffee, I'm always up for that. I started up something called scalingpurpose.com, so people can come and reach me through that and get an idea of the kind of areas I get involved in. But um, I have always been up for meeting good people, because if you live your life thinking that you're after a PO or an order, that's very limiting. I want to meet good people that I can spend time with over decades, and over time, if there's stuff that we can help each other with, then that's a good thing. So yeah, just get in touch, I guess, is the easy one.
Brilliant. Well, my second question was going to be, any last thoughts for our audience in terms of uncertainty, or any extra thoughts?
Um, um, in terms of uncertainty, well, not really. I think that the bit that I guess we haven't touched too much upon is the health specific stuff, and we talk about this work life balance. And having been, let's say, having been given the opportunity to be a consumer of the healthcare services over the last 4 years, there's one thing I noticed, and also being working in that industry, is that many of us assume that when we go into those environments that they know exactly what they're talking about, and they have a wonderful view of all of your health things. Now, that's not always the case. Um, so a lot of us are, let's say, consummate professionals in our day job, highly organized, and we strip ourselves of any kind of, um, I guess, curiosity when we enter the kind of medical world. So all of the things you are, the consummate professional in your working life and at home, don't strip those when you go into sort of any medical area, because you should find out everything you can and ask questions and understand things. Um, in terms of change, I think that it is a very topical subject, Claire, because I think I've turned into my mum, and who has often talked about the world being unstable. I think the world is an interesting place. The next 15 years are going to see phenomenal amounts of change. Um, and I was the CEO of the School of Life for a while, and it basically, the great thing about that, it helps you understand yourself better and be better equipped in order to deal with life's changes and be more resilient. Now, the way to do that, I think, is to have confidence in what you're good at, and anything where you kind of think you can improve, it's just learning, and actually learning gives you lots of energy, and we've all got a lot of learning to do over the next 15 years. So and adapt and everything else. So Elon Musk's 10 billion robots, whatever happens,
Yeah.
we just control what we can control.
And stay curious. Oh, Jake,
Exactly.
thank you so much. It has been an absolute delight to talk with you. I know that you have to dash, but for listeners, listen again. There are so many nuggets of sage advice in Jake's message, and he really did live up to the intro. So thank you. Like, listen, subscribe. Love you loads, and see you again soon.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Claire. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.